talent, it's coming together of passion, and more so, at the backdrop of what's happening in reality, we're here. So this is really a space of hope, a space of healing, a space of positivity, and a space of peace. And we, through the discussion, we would like to know which way is, the whole story, where is it going, and how do we further preserve. As I just said, oral tradition is something, in the absence of written thing, we stand to lose whatever we've had in the past, and these are capturing our past, our stories, and I'm so happy to have an eclectic group of people here. I mean, this is by far a panel which has over 8 members, but we're going to make it informal, we're going to make it engaging, and we're going to make it, purposeful. I would like to introduce, first of all, I'll go from here in no order of importance. Everyone is important. Samrat Chaudhary, former colleague of mine in Hindustan Times, a prolific journalist and an author. He's been writing about Northeast in the context of immigration and the strategic importance of Northeast in the world of where we are right now. And Preeti Gill, she is sought after literary agent. She was the brain behind Zuban publication, which had documented many stories from the Northeast. So she brings alive many stories which would otherwise be lost. So thank you so much, Preeti, for doing that really. And Mandira, my former colleague in Telegraph, she's a senior journalist who has been writing on culture, politics, books, and different aspects of life. And right now, she is working to perpetuate the legacy of her grandfather, Kuldip Nair. So she is looking after the Kuldip Nair Trust. And John is a lawyer who by day is a half-marathon runner, a foodie, a bird watcher, and I'm so happy that he could be here. Aditya Arya, thank you so much for cancelling your very important meeting with a diplomat to be here. This is the biggest solidarity you could show. Aditya Arya brought alive a very important history of Indian, a certain era, because he found a huge trunk box under, in the basement of his house in Gurgaon. He didn't open it for many years, until one day he was curious enough to open the trunk and he found unpublished pictures of the pre-independence, is it, or post?
Most of them pre.
Yeah, pre-independence pictures which were taken by his uncle. And he put together in a book, and today he is a proud owner of India's only camera museum. So thank you so much for joining. Diplomat Gautam Mukhopadhyay, a former ambassador of India to Burma, I'm so sorry. Former ambassador to Burma and other countries, and he is right now a senior fellow with Center for Policy Research. He's been traveling quite extensively to Northeast, so his views are very important, his views are very strategic and very relevant. Vivek Singh, as I communicated to him earlier, he tells me that he's been documenting our town, Lamka, since 2006, so the rich takeaway that your photographs will have will be really wonderful. Lalsan, thank you for being here. He is director with an art firm, and he dabbles in creative art, innovative works, all of that, yeah. So let me just begin with Preeti. Yeah. Preeti, as you have been, documenting a lot of our stories, bringing alive, stories of myth, stories of women, all of those. When you look at, our cultures presented in a manner like this, where do you think we could leverage it? Where are the areas that we could sort of bring further so that, it create a wider audience, or, maybe we're able to tell a far more, a better story about ourselves?
Thank you for asking me to be here today. And this exhibition is really quite fantastic. I came earlier in the day also to take a look around. I didn't manage to finish because there is so much to see and so much to listen to, because the young woman who was taking me around had many stories to tell about each of the photos that is being put up here. And as somebody who's, of course, doesn't belong to the Northeast, but has traveled there fairly extensively over these last many, many years, 20 years or so, I just feel like from a personal point of view, it's an area that I knew nothing about when I started out. I had never been, and many of the stories that one heard later, because I traveled extensively in Nagaland and in Assam, and later in Mizoram as well, a little bit in Manipur. But the first project that I was doing in Nagaland, I remember hearing lots and lots of stories of the stuff that had happened in the 50s and 60s. I didn't know a thing about it. Those were not the days of the kind of information that one finds at one's fingertips now. You just look at your phone and you know what's happening everywhere. Those days when we were in school and college, we really had no idea about what was happening in this very remote part of the country. Nobody knew the names of these places, nobody really had heard about any of the stuff that was happening, for example, in Nagaland. So it came to me as a big shock, how almost every family had had stuff that they wanted to talk about. And I think for me that was the beginning point. If I did not know, I did want my daughter to know, I wanted my kids to know about it. And that for me became the starting point of wanting to bring these stories out. I also feel that for me, literature, culture, art, everything that you see here is actually much more than an artistic expression, because it is giving you the history, it is giving you the backdrop, the place where you come from. These are your roots, this is your history, and especially for an oral culture which depends largely on storytelling and on word of mouth, it's even more important. And to be able to preserve that, to archive it, to keep it is important. The other thing that I think is important with literature or with culture or performance is the fact that it's a space which you can still use to question and still use to dialogue. A lot of places seem to have now closed down because you can't say many things, media doesn't allow you, or various other things don't allow you. But literature, or talking through a book, because it's already out there in the public domain, that is one of the things that I find quite important about being able to put stories out. And storytelling anyway is something we all do and we all listen to. So.
Thank you for that perspective. Mandira, I'd like to just come to you. As a journalist who covered diverse issues across India, how do you feel an exhibition like this can dispel stereotyping and turn it into positive stories and a lot of things that are misrepresented?
Thank you for calling me Hoinu. I'm glad that there are two former colleagues, so it's an old relationship. I came earlier in the day, like Preeti, and I was kind of, as a journalist, you kind of know you're sort of a jack of all trades and a master of none. So while you see and you read about Manipur and you read about what's happening, or you read about the Northeast, unless you've traveled there or you have, you only have a Delhi perspective. I was really blown away by the exhibition because I looked at the postcards, for example, and there were stories about what was home. And I have a couple of them. One of them, I think, said that for me, home is where I was with my mother and all of us are washing up in the kitchen and we sit down and talk. One postcard said, home is my mother. The young lady who was taking us around, who was taking me around, talked about how she was trying to resettle her mother, her sister trying to find college. And for someone who has grown up with the same kind of story of separation or partition, this really felt familiar. It was a feeling I understood. It was a feeling I realized that however much I could have read about Manipur or I've heard the stories, I've been moved by your story. The exhibition somehow gives it this detail, I'm looking at this boy looking at me, and there is no way that I can go back home without having his face in my head. So I think that this is possibly one of the most powerful, most poignant, most moving exhibitions I've seen in a very long time. And I think that, whether you listen to the music, whether you see the drum, I think this is what you can do in a way to sort of send out and finally put faces to what people just read as statistics. And I think this is it. I think this is your story. You have managed to create Lamka here for everybody who wants to come and see, everybody who's lost, everybody who's felt, everybody who's grieving. And I think this is possibly the most powerful thing that you can do, is art and making it personal and personal stories. And I think you've got that. So that's what I would like to say.
Thank you so much. I also want to emphasize that this exhibition is about celebrating youth talent, homegrown talent, and we have a generation growing up in Delhi who trace their roots, of course, to back home. So John is one of them, which is the reason why we wanted him to be here. John, as somebody who traced your roots in back home and you're born here, how much of that root comes alive in your work, and how much of that influence do you carry today? And does your aspirations also come from the fact that you trace your roots from a place which is far away?
Right, thanks. It's a great privilege to be part of this panel. I'm probably the youngest on this panel, so it is indeed a great privilege. I would, as the youngest, I would also take the liberty to sort of segue a little away from the question and just give a bit of context. I was born in Lamka, but I grew up in Delhi for the most part, except for college. And in many ways, I'm a sum of many cities. I went to college in Bangalore. I grew up in Delhi. I spent some time in Bombay. So in that sense, I am truly a sum of many cities. But also at the same time, I've spent a large part of my adult life trying to understand the place where I was born. And particularly so in the last couple of years, it's been really an attempt to claw back some of my family's history, my history, and where I came from. In particular, this project itself was a way of learning and unlearning so much about the place I was born. And it's truly a labor of love for a lot of us, including me, to be able to put this exhibition together, and nothing else apart from the fact that we want to show Lamka and the ordinariness of Lamka, and in that process also learn about its people, is what really inspired us to put this together. And I think by and large, the kind of reception that we've had from people and the kind of comments that have come from a whole diversity of people, a whole variety of people has been nothing but humbling. Thanks again for everyone who's come to this panel as well.
Thank you so much, Aditya Arya, as somebody who's held the camera and captured many important aspects of the country. How do you think a visual storytelling like this will help in preserving and perpetuating an oral culture like ours? And if I may ask you point blank, would you be tempted to take this to your gallery?
Thank you, Hoinu, and thank you for reintroducing me to Mukho, whom I'm meeting after 1977. He was one batch senior to me, and I knew him as Mukho, and that's it. And so as you know that I run a museum of photography and art, and we have huge galleries. I would like to congratulate the team which has installed this. Beautifully done, well contextualized. Yes, I was going to offer that. Anyway, next year we will take it, because as you know, and very few people know, I spent close to 6 years going back and forth to Northeast. So when I was young, in 70s, I used to read Verrier Elwin's accounts of Nagaland and the stories of Elwin and his various journeys. And in 84, at the age of 24, I said one day, let me go visit Nagaland, and that love for that Northeast started. And for 6 years, I was going back and forth on my own, from Mon to Tuensang to Mogokchong to you name it, I was there documenting. And post 91, I forgot about it. I moved on, life moved on into advertising in a big way. Last year I met another photographer who was independently working there. And I very firmly believe visual documentation, visual archives have a very important role to play. Pablo Bartolome. So Pablo and I decided, okay, you take out your archives, I'll take out my archives, and we're going to launch a big show in August for a month at Museo, revisiting Nagaland. We revisiting Nagas, and because he worked a lot more extensively, he worked in Manipur a lot. I did not. Most of my work was confined. So I feel it's very important aspect of one's work as a photographer. We all make money, but visual documentation is something which we all should do, because these are visual histories and which have to be preserved for posterity. So thank you very much, and the show is on.
Thank you so much. Ambassador, sir, as somebody who's had your stint in Afghanistan, Syria and Burma, how do you think a beautifully crafted together exhibition like this will help in sort of, sending that message about the Northeast to the international crowd? How do you think this will perpetuate further?
Thank you. I'm not sure that my postings have anything to do with the answer. One of the things that I think is really striking about this exhibition, and I want to join all my fellow panelists for their observation, and in particular to highlight that this has been a collective mind and a collective brain, not an individual, kind of inspiration, and that it reflects in many ways a very contemporary gaze into a Lanka of the past and the present. And one of the sort of really interesting things about that gaze is that it's not a particularly tribal gaze. It's a very contemporary look, tribal hotspot than Lanka. But in a way, through this exhibition, all of you have put Lanka on the map. And Lanka on the map is a double-edged message, because this Lanka was also Chulachandpur, or this Lanka was always our Lanka, or Lanka for the tribals. But interestingly, Lanka is a word that means junction or crossroads, and it's the same word that is used in Meitei as well, a variation of that, Lankai, all over Manipur. So in some ways, we are capturing also that great sort of crossroads, great tribal hotspot that Churachandpur is. And in a way, Lanka has jumped the gun. There are many more worthy candidates to be the first in that scene, and congratulations to you. You have put a part of the world that very few people in the rest of India have heard of, let alone visited. Very few people know that it takes 15 hours from Aizawl today to get to Lanka or to get out of Lanka into the rest of India, whereas previously it used to take 1 hour between Lanka and Imphal. So I think that's the great achievement. And the added element is that at a time when the Kuki-Zo people are suffering, this message is not about suffering. This message is about creativity. It's about everyday life. It's about, just everyday things that people do. And it's a story not of victimhood, but of positive hope, creation, and new kind of energy. Just one further word on the communication. You know, in many ways, to pick up something that Aditya said, the world is moving towards a trend where visual communication is in fact dominating other forms of communication. The written word will never lose its value. The literature will never lose its value. Poetry will never lose its value. But increasingly, we are in an age of reels and memes and TikTok, and in a way, this offers mediums that that the young people can tap and in a way connect with the rest of the world, and particularly the youth demography of the rest of the world. But I would also say that there are very interesting things happening in the Northeast that are worth looking at. And lately I've been in touch with a Wancho scholar who has been trying to develop a wholly indigenous script for the Wanchos, not cobbled out of Latin script or Roman script or Persian script or the Devanagari script, but out of sounds and phonetics and symbols that are there embedded in the Wancho language itself. So very often when there are things that are lost in translation between the Zo languages, the Ibizo languages, whether it's Tharo or Paite, into the Latin script and into English, maybe there's a way also, as you rediscover values like Hamko, that you also find ways to express thoughts in your own native symbols. So there is writing, there is memes, and all that goes along with it, and there is also a possibility of new scripts, which, thanks to Google Translate and other forms of AI, you can immediately translate from one language to another. So these are some of the ways I think your messages can be conveyed to the rest of the world.
Thank you. That was an insightful. Vivek, as somebody who has been documenting Lanka town since 2006, you mentioned that you have seen the evolution, and this exhibition is very much about the evolution of time from then till now. You have managed to capture a few changes, so could you share what are the changes that you've seen from the time you documented Lanka in 2006 to perhaps a few years from then?
Well, the images here are much older, of course. I went only in 2005, 6, that way. But even now, they've been changed. When I first went, it was more of a sleepy town than what it is now. And we more or less resemble, to a degree, in some of the images what you see here. Since 2006, there's been marked in that way, like it was sleepy, there was no electricity, so there was practically no Wi-Fi connectivity, because all those things that brought out like the new cultural revolution of sorts. So now, when you want to understand something, what's going on, I always look not towards the journalists, because I come from being a journalist, but towards the young people there, because I trust
a lot of people to get into more art forms, different styles. Like for example, just to take an example, one of the artists here is my cousin brother as well. So he likes capturing the town in the most normal way possible. So if you get a chance to see his art, so it's very normal, and that's also something that we love doing. And then the second one that I want to add on this is the archives, this archive of photographs. I met this guy, this person on the first day. He was here, and one thing that he said to me like stuck with me. But on the first day, we actually didn't have any capture. Okay, just FYI. We had like we were thinking that we wanted to do an experiment of sort. And then there's this guy who walks up to me and he's like, the fact that there are no captions makes it relatable for me. That any one of these photographs would be my childhood. So we feel that that's also something that's very powerful. And yeah, so I think it's a deliberate attempt to also cater to a lot of audiences, plus also tell a lot of stories. and we are actually very, what do you call it? We surprised ourselves, I would say, that we did not expect it to come together so fluidly, and so the narrative becomes very powerful at the end. And I think this is what happens when you put together a lot of youth minds together for a good cause.
It's so encouraging to see like a lot of old people who come in here and they can spot either themselves, or their grandfathers, their brothers, sisters, these images. It's just amazing, you know. And I've experienced that earlier as well. About a few other exhibits that I've done online in the past, issue based. But also because it's a small town, small population means a lot of people know each other across tribal lines, I would say. And that's amazing. That's so it's such a beautiful thing to see. Like grandmothers coming in here and really excited to see like these images. You know? So it's, I think, a great initiative for the community as well. You know, and we saw like so many people coming in through the last 10 days. It's been quite a beautiful experience. Yeah.
Able to see at a time when so much has happened that in this